Welcome to the White Sox REKAP Podcast. I am Ryan McGuffey. All right, it's officially time for spring training baseball games to begin. We are past the pitchers and catchers reporting, the excitement of the first full squad workout. It's actually time to see the Chicago White Sox start to take on other teams in Cactus League action. That got myself and Brian Anderson thinking, who do we expect to break out in 2026? Certainly in 2025, Colson Montgomery had his breakout campaign in the second half, crushing 21 homers alone and taking off and leaving us all thinking, what might be next? Well, we got a couple of names in mind, and that doesn't include Mooney Murakami. But is he my breakout player? Is he BA's breakout player? Does he qualify as a breakout player? Who's your breakout player? We're going to discuss that and more on this edition of the White Sox REKAP Podcast, and it starts right now. Brian Anderson back on the White Sox REKAP Podcast. The podcast is, there's a lot of, you can just feel the momentum already with where the podcast numbers are going, with what people are saying about the Chicago White Sox. We got more national scribes, more attention on the White Sox than in years past. Mooney Murakami, you heard me mention him in the open, BA. I saw a video that our friend Chuck Garfien posted last week at spring training of the autograph hounds in Arizona, and you know them well from your time with the White Sox. But I don't know if you saw the video, but it was as much excitement and clamor for a player at White Sox camp that I could remember, and seriously, like well over 10, 15 years.
Yeah. Mooney's going to Eminem, right?
I like that you named him Eminem.
I tell you, I just can't, we've had a week or so to talk about it. And the more I think about the White Sox having the opportunity to sign this guy, and the fact that they did is so huge, man. Like an established Japanese superstar coming over on a multi-year deal that's relatively small considering what he's capable of getting. But my God, like the social media buzz. I mean, Brooks Boyer, Jerry Reinsdorf, Chris Getz, they're on to something. If it wasn't great enough that he's going to be hitting in the heart of the lineup, the draw for the Japanese and the Asian community is going to be incredible for this guy.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Eminem Mooney here on the podcast, and pretty soon the World Baseball Classic is going to start up, and he's going to take off as our five members of the Chicago White Sox. Although I did like to hear he will be staying a little bit longer than originally thought. So part of me kind of is like, it's a bummer that a guy like him and some of these young guys are going to break off. But I actually like the excitement the WBC creates, and the buzz and atmosphere and real lifelike games these guys are playing in, kind of like the Olympics that we see going on right now. Like when these NHL guys come back, they're playing at the highest level in the world right now. So they're not going to have any drop off. So, I expect the same from Mooney. So, but let's transition, to what this podcast topic is all about. And it's who we expect to break out in 2026. We've been talking about Mooney Murakami. Now, let's finish our Mooney Murakami discussion real quick as to why both of us are not selecting him as our breakout player. Why don't you go first?
Well, for the same reason I didn't pick. I think it's insane that like someone like an Ichiro Suzuki come over here and like, if you have an opportunity to win Rookie of the Year, like, dude, you're the best hitter in the world. You come over here, you're already an established pro. The comps to Japanese level of play is great. It's not the big leagues, but it's really good. So that would be like a guy getting to go back, to college and say he's after playing, in the
G League. Oh wait, too soon, too fresh.
Yeah, man. But yeah, I just think this guy, everything I've seen, everything I've read, everything I've watched on social media, this guy's got all the intangibles to be a superstar. And the White Sox are really fortunate to have him.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Like when you have almost 300 professional home runs under your belt, like I honestly do. I expect him to hit 30 homers. I do. I've seen some arguments like on MLB Network saying, well, Shohei only had 27 in his Shohei missed like 58 games his rookie year too. I do expect Mooney to hit 30. I'm not qualifying him as a potential breakout candidate because I kind of expect to turn over the back of the baseball card and see the pop that the White Sox signed him for, whether he hits 240 or 270 and he does chase a lot. I just expect the power to be there. So
remember too, like it wasn't like with Colson when he hit all those home runs and everyone's like, wait a minute, this guy's young. Like Murakami, he's not anyone that's had that much success over that many years in a row. He's not coming over here putting pressure on himself. I'm sure he's saying, can I do it at the big league level consistently? But when you've made that many left turns, as Jim Thome would say, you've gotten used to it. You don't forget how to hit homers.
Yeah, like it's like when Ichiro had over 1,000 hits in Japan before. If you've already got the home run credential, we expect you to have a little bit of a breakout. So Colson Montgomery, we're also going to disqualify him from most likely to break out because, quite frankly, he did it. He did it from the very well documented timeout he took being shipped to Arizona in the first half, and then very calculative. We heard Chris Getz say that they kind of plotted his debut to be in Colorado against a lesser opponent in July. And then we know what he did, 21 homers in the second half. Here's the list of players. There are 4 that had more home runs in the second half of the season of 2025 than Colson Montgomery. You ready? Cal Raleigh.
The Schwarbs.
Junior Caminero. Shohei Ohtani and Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah. That's incredible, man.
When you're
and that's why he's off the list, right?
That's why he's off the list.
He's off the list because he's done it. This is a different podcast topic, but we're
going to do a Colson podcast here shortly. But yeah,
predictions for sure. But for us, it's like stay out of that nasty 1 month slump that most young players go through. God knows I did a couple times. I like to do it once a year, but yeah, man, he's just got to prove to himself and say, hey, just go out there and do what I can and just try to have some mirror last year in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a laundry list of here's what I love about this topic is that it's not confined to like 3 players. That this is like there's a lot of different dudes on this list that you could pick from here. And hopefully we're not picking the same player. We'll see what happens. We don't like to converse too much beforehand. We like to give you the raw reaction. I mean, I would even argue like Shane Smith's probably off the table, right? When you come out and have an all-star season in your first season and finish really well, like he finished as good as he started and should be the White Sox opening day starter in 2026. Do we expect regression, BA? Like before we continue about like guys taking the next step, because so many different guys of this young core took steps in 2025 and they all had their little slumps. Chase Mydroth came out getting on base in like 10 straight games. Then he had a little slump. Edgar Carol took a while to hit his first home run, but he was always lacing shots in the gap. He had a big game-winning hit at Fenway Park, early in his call up. So there's a lot of different examples of players who took a little while to get going. Some who got to a hot start and took a little slump. Why do you expect some type of regression from some of these guys?
Well, it's just I can only reference to what I've seen, right? And I've seen it from my own from myself, from my own play, and I've seen it from the best, right? I mean, I was fortunate enough to play with 4 Hall of Famers, but I mean, I've seen Jermaine Dye go through through slumps. I've seen him almost strike out 5 times in a game, and that's when he hit 40-something homers. Like, it's going to happen. I've seen Jim Thome go through nasty slumps, but the ability to bounce back and bounce back quickly is what separates a decent or good player from the great ones. And so I know that for myself, when I would struggle, especially early in 06, 07, when I was scuffling, I mean, the weather, the fans have high expectations. I was pressing. I was hard on myself. I was getting caught up in the media and what they had to say, what fans were saying. So I think it's really important for a guy like Colson or Chase to kind of kill the noise, stay away from it, just go to the ballpark every day, look forward to seeing your teammates and look forward to like going out there and just grinding with them, and all will be okay.
Let me ask you one follow-up to that, because I thought what you said there was really important, like the difference between the great ones and then kind of the guys who just can't get out of it, and that regression becomes a little bit longer stretch, or maybe it's a month or 2 months rather than a week or 2 weeks. When you have a young club like the White Sox with so many young players with such an incredible amount of talent, you're talking about, 5 guys that were in the top 100 a year ago. The White Sox have 6 players in the top 100, depending on what prospect list you're looking at right now today. When you have a young club and you have a little bit of regression, how can guys avoid falling into 3, 4, 5 week stretches and come out of it when you're looking around and you don't see a Jim Thome or you don't see Jermaine Dye?
You gotta, the worst thing you could possibly do, it's a combined thing. You can't listen to the media, because they will remind you how good you are, but man, they will remind you how terrible you are, because it's impossible to not get the camera in your face. Like, hey, you're 0 for your last 15 with 12 strikeouts. And it's like every day. And they know, and believe me, as a hitter, every at bat, how many times you struck out. But the thing that really, really prevented me from spiraling out of control as I progressed in my career, as I became like a vet, right, was not chasing at bats. If you just go, I hate the term like one at bat at a time. Like, no one thinks like that. Everyone has a brain. Your subconscious won't allow you to forget that. But if you go up there and you say, hey man, the past is the past. I'm going to go out there and make an impact today. I'm going to have great at bats. I'm going to drive the ball. I'm going to hit the ball hard. But when a player, especially a young player, they sit there and they chase old at bats they can never get back, it's a really slippery slope.
Now, I know people are tuned in. They want to like, well, who's going to break out? I want to hear from you guys. Who's going to break out? I got my player. I'm going to ask you one more question about spring training games, because you heard me in the open say, here we go. It's time to actually stop doing, some of the monotonous stuff, because, spring training, like those drills become pretty monotonous and repetitive, and it's back to the basics, first to third and all that other stuff. When you see a guy have a great spring and hit like 390 with 6 bombs, or you see a guy that you expect to have a great spring and he hits 143 with a homer and 2 RBI, what does it mean? Like, how can you have a bad spring but still get good results? And how can you have a great spring and not get too full of yourself as you carry that into the regular season? Because I think sometimes as fans, you talked about hearing the noise and the media and stuff, and now with social media, you see the stats that are out there all the time. Some people might go, this guy's hitting 143. How can we have any expectations? He comes to Chicago and he flips with the guy who's hitting 389 in spring. How do you read between the lines of spring training statistics?
Yeah, I mean, you'll see some of the more polished players, and maybe like a Mydroth or the second or third year guy might be able to do this. But when you watch the really good players, the result is really irrelevant to them. It's, did they get a good pitch to hit? Were they late? The actual outcome is meaningless to them. So like a Paul Konerko, if he's going out there and he hits 210 in the spring with a couple homers, he doesn't care. If he's on time, his hands are in a good position. He knows when those lights come on in April or late March, it's game on, right? Where someone like me who's younger was like fighting for a position every single year. So every at bat to me, I had to treat it like it was a major league game that counted. So some of those young guys trying to make a name for themselves, you better believe, like Braden Montgomery.
Yeah,
his at bat's probably going to look a little different than Chase Mydroth or Colson's, right? He, in his head, even though Chris Getz probably told him you're not breaking camp or what have you, he doesn't care. Like I know many times they're like, oh, they signed this guy and this guy, you probably won't break camp. You can't think like that. You have to think you're trying to make the team every spring. Yeah,
I think that's really good insight, because sometimes it's hard not to get wrapped up in a star. Like if Colson, for example, has a quote bad spring, but defensively he's playing well and his hands look good and he feels great about his timing. You know how the balls, they fall differently in Arizona sometimes. The high sky is Hawk like to say. As Hawk like to say all the time in Arizona. All right, let's get to it, because you mentioned Braden Montgomery. I'm not going to select him. We don't know when he's going to be here. I don't expect him to start camp with the team or break camp with the team. I don't think you do either. I know you want him to. Selfishly, you want to see the player. I keep calling it the bridge to Braden. Maybe he comes. I don't expect, quite frankly, anyone to come up and have a Colson Montgomery type half. Any half. I don't expect Colson Montgomery to have a half like that this year, or any player. I mean, what he did was borderline historic in many ways. He was the first player to do this, the first White Sox to do this. So I'm going to leave that alone, but I do know he's capable of having a 30-homer season. I don't know what the ceiling is for a guy like Chase Mydroth. I think he's just like a grindy dirtball player. You saw the bobblehead that we've made fun of a little bit, that his uniform's all dirtied up. We both like a lot of these guys. We've not been afraid to say that, and we're going to have predictions at the end of spring training for a lot of these guys. But where are you shopping when it comes time to, when I say who's your most likely breakout candidate in 2026, who is it and why?
So the player I got to have the most likely to break out in 2026 is Edgar Carol. And for a multitude of reasons. But first, let me say, the reason why I like this kid is there's just a certain presence about him I love. Defensively, he's off the charts. The pressure on him to perform at a high level is probably not so great because they have Teal there as well. What I look at the White Sox catching situation as like an NFL running back situation, like the Rams and the Bears, right? Like they have these two badass players. It's like, hey man, don't worry about it. If you have a bad game, a couple pass balls, your arm's a little sore, your knees are bothering you, your back's hurt, flip-flop, you'll DH, you'll go to left, whatever the case may be. So Edgar Carroll, is his ceiling as high as like a Colson Montgomery or a Braden Montgomery or, a Mooney who's going to come here and potentially hit 50? No. But, man, there's just certain guys you can see the way they attack at-bats. They spray the entire field. They put the bat on the ball, and they're just pros, and I love that. A good comp for me is like I've compared him to Victor Martinez. I think he's a much better catcher than Vic was. Sorry, Victor, but the power probably won't be as good as Victor Martinez, like the high teens, low 20s. But, man, a 280 with 8 to 12 out of him with 60 to 70 ribbies, but just having professional at-bats, I think is huge for that team to grow and eventually get to the playoffs.
When you said Victor Martinez a year ago, I think I'd have to go back and look, but my eyes were like, wait, what? Because that guy was a dude, and he wore the White Sox out. I mean, he made a career off the White Sox, but that guy could play the damn game, and he was as good of a hitter at that position that I've seen in the last 25 years.
Yeah, other than dancing Carl Everett, I mean, Vic Martinez is the best switch hitter I've ever seen, man.
Edgar Carroll, a year ago, a 1.2 WAR player, his slash line 268, 333, 356. I was hoping to see a little bit more pop out of him. He did finish with 5 homers, 36 ribbies, 17 doubles. He played in 111 games. He was one of those guys. You go back to him and Chase Mydroth came up in April, and that was the first aha moment that I remember thinking Chris Getz doesn't give. He's not sitting there thinking about Super 2 or he's looking at results in spring training. We asked you to do these things in Charlotte. You did them. It's time to come up. And the one thing I really like about Edgar Carroll, because I have a hard time trying to figure out what his ceiling is. Because if his ceiling's Victor Martinez, holy hell, because there's a lot of people in the offseason that were like, well, the White Sox are going to trade from a position of strength, which is catcher. Do you know how many? By the way, they also have Corey Lee. They have 3 guys.
Yeah, but why would you? The crazy part is, why would you trade?
Why would you
look at? I know it's a different sport.
Yes,
but it's like with Manungai, right? With the Bears, even though he's not running back 1. Are you kidding me? He's in there usually on the first drive or by the second drive, and he's probably scoring a touchdown. I mean, if you have these two these two blue chip type prospects that you can rotate, and one can catch 100 games or 90 games, the other can catch 70. You know the pressure that takes off your body, but also it allows you to go out there and be fresh every day.
Well, I could tell you how many catchers the White Sox have developed in the last 30 years. Pretty much zero. Like Ron Karkovice. I mean, Matt Johnson was a high draft pick. How many teams have the White Sox catching situation right now? Seriously, 3?
No, I don't know. I don't think they have they don't have the blue chip prospects, the youth and everything. They don't have those 2 guys. And both those guys, they're exciting players. It's not like back in the day where it's like, oh, he'll put the bat on the ball, but he'll catch a great game. Hey man, Edgar Carroll will backdoor you at third base. He'll throw you out at second. He'll spray the field. Kyle Teal will bump you to second or center field. I mean, they're really exciting, man.
Yeah, you look at here's what I love about Edgar Carol that doesn't get talked about as much as it should. He's 22. He's going to turn 23 like a week into the season. That guy was always the youngest player at each level. He was 20 at AA. He was 21 at AAA. And he's the youngest player in AA. He's the youngest player in AAA. And he's 22 years old with 111 games of major league experience at one of the toughest positions. What does that mean to have that type of experience at that age?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say anything because you and Hoodie will give me a hard time. Braden Montgomery is going to be 23, but he's too young to get called up. I just think the White Sox, I guess the only downfall for them is they've started his clock, his arbitrary clock. But man, if you can get a catcher, think about Guff, think about like what position on the field that you're like, if we can get this young guy to be polished and not have to worry about him, like, not going down to block a ball when there's a man on third base, it's a huge run, or advancing the runner, or overthrowing, the second or baseman or shortstop on a steal. Just having that makeup that's off the charts, you cannot teach that. To have that at 22 is incredible.
Yeah, and that's why, to me, the White Sox are going into spring training with all three catchers. Because what are you trading a guy with a ceiling that was a top 50 prospect? What are you trading him for? You're probably trading him for somebody that looks a lot like Edgar Carol, high ceiling, at a position you don't have. No. Like, why not?
What do you think catchers grow on trees too?
No.
Like, these are two premier potential, like, high value catching prospects that are now in the big leagues. Like, I'm holding on to those guys for dear life, like, to make sure those guys don't get away. It's like having two frontline starters. Like, one's going to be your opening day starter, one's going to be your number two. Like, okay, you don't bail on one. Yeah.
So Edgar Carol is Brian Anderson's player most likely to break out in 2026. You ready for mine? You've mentioned his name quite a few times.
Did I?
You did. And it's not Braden Montgomery. It is Kyle Teal.
Nice.
I think Kyle Teal, 3 or 4 years from now, is going to be a guy that Major League Baseball is talking about. So these receipts will be saved because this is on YouTube. So if Kyle Teal doesn't go this way, I guess it's up to me. I do. When I talked to him, and you heard it here a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, Kyle Teal's not afraid. Dude, this is a guy that's highly sought after and thinks highly of himself. Has put on a ton of muscle, like 25 pounds in the offseason. And I think he's a middle of the order guy. Like, I think right now I'm looking at him, to me, to be my long-term number 2 or number 3 hitter. He's that guy that it's like Mooney's hitting 4th. And where am I hitting Kyle Teal? Probably 3rd. I'd probably put Colson 5 right now, sure, with that power. And now who's getting great pitches to hit? Here's Kyle Teal in 2025, 1.9 WAR. He had a slash line. I have to pull this up because I really wanted to I looked at his slash line in the second half, and it is just juicy. Here's his slash line in the second half. 288, 376, 457. That's an 833 OPS. He had all 8 of his home runs in the second half, 29 of his 35 RBI in the second half. He had 23 walks in the second half. Oh, and by the way, he also plays catcher and is probably a good enough athlete to fill in at corner outfielders if and when somebody needs a breather. And certainly at first base, as we saw him do a little bit. We didn't really see. I think as a pinch hitter, he came in, played like a first base position at some point. But Kyle Teal is not going to be asked to probably do that this year. I just think from an offensive standpoint, and here's another little thing, a little nugget. How many times have you heard a team that traded a player? So the Red Sox trade Kyle Teal in the Garrett Crochet trade. The following offseason, multiple times call Chris Getz about trying to reacquire Kyle Teal. I asked Teal directly about that, and he said it's impossible to not hear that kind of stuff. But yeah, Chris Getz probably laughed a few times and said, we appreciate the phone call and the contact. There is no effing way we're trading Kyle.
Yeah.
What are your
They didn't
thoughts?
get
on
rid of
Kyle
a
Teal?
they didn't get rid of a corner outfielder or like a third baseman or maybe even a second baseman. They
Right.
got rid of a really good catcher who's going to probably hit middle of the order. And again, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I look at this component. One could argue that our two picks, those two catchers, are the most important, if not the most important, close to it, even more so than up the middle, right? Like with Mydrop and Montgomery. Yes, they're great, but like catching, man, if you make mistakes at the catching position, or you're a bad receiver or can't throw guys out in a pinch, I mean it's a merry-go-round.
How much pressure is on Carol and Teal to guide a young staff as a young catcher trying to figure out his journey in the major leagues?
I think the pressure's all but gone. I think they have each other. It would be great. I would pay money to be a fly on the wall to hear, once they go through spring and they catch everybody's bullpens, because the best part, I used to listen to AJ and Toby all the time, Toby Hall. It was incredible. Did they love the pitchers? Yes. Did they love Bobby and all those guys and every single one of the guys on our staff, Thornton? Yeah. But man, if a guy was off and they would be in the locker room and be like, I have no fucking shot today. Like, he can't throw a slider for a strike. Like, I hope they swing and miss the fastball. So they have each other to vent to. So I think that's really important to have that catching core be close.
All right, BA, you did a lot of games for CHSN in 2025, and I mentioned the splits for Kyle Teal in the second half. What offensively about Kyle Teal stood out to you that you think is impressive, especially from that position? Because you don't see a ton of catchers have that type of power and that type of walk rate, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Is he a well-rounded player? Of course, but as a former major leaguer and a guy who got to play with such like elite players, like I think I mentioned 4 Hall of Famers. One in particular, Jim Thome, he did something incredibly well. He used to take fastballs on the inner third of the plate to a left-handed hitter, obviously, and he was able to absolutely demolish those pitches to dead center field or the middle of the field, right? And Kyle Teal has that same skill set. I watched a video, or I sent you one the other day, where he takes a fastball down below the knees. It's on the inner half of the plate or inner third of the plate and launches it to center field. I can't tell you how hard that is to do because the bat has to stay on plane and the bat path has to be incredibly good. Now, most young players too, like myself, I would get so geeked up that I was sitting on a fastball and got it. I could hook that pitch for a double or maybe pull that pitch for a home run if I was lucky, but he's able to stay smooth through the zone and backspin that ball to center. And let me tell you, if you're able to do that for power, your ceiling is huge.
So I think if Kyle Teal went from a 1.9 to a 3.8 WAR player, and Edgar Carol went from a 1.2 to a 2.4, I think we both are going to get a nod for qualifying for a breakout season. Also, by the way, that would equal roughly just a nod over 6 wins from 2 players playing one position. So I don't know if Edgar Carol and Kyle Teal are the most important players on the 2026 White Sox, but I think you made a really good argument as to why they are. And they may not end up with 35 homers like Mooney or Colson or somebody else, but their value to the 2026 White Sox and going forward, to your point, is as valuable as any 2 players on the field for the White Sox.
Yeah, it's hey, look at it this way. You ask any pitching staff, be like, hey, would you rather have a really awesome shortstop like Alex Rodriguez, or would you rather have a catcher or 2 that are great receivers, can throw guys out, and you love pitching to them? They're going to take the catchers every time. There's nothing worse than a catcher that doesn't know how to call a game, doesn't know how to command a pitching staff, and then makes inadvertent throws all the time.
All right, last question for you as we put a bow on it. I like to put a bow on it. What do you need to see most from the White Sox in their spring training games? Like, is it fundamentals? What is something that's like, no matter what happens, I need to see this?
They got to play defense at a high level. If they're not going to beat teams, 9-7 and outscore them and really punch them in the mouth, you have to play elite defense. I remember back in spring trainings, you had mentioned it gets a little monotonous going through the first and thirds and the bunt defenses. You know what? It does. But man, Joey Cora and Alec and Ozzie Guillen, having both those guys be former middle infielders as your coaching staff, it made an incredible impact on us because we were so dialed in on defense. I mean, you got Juan Uribe, Alexi, Iguchi, Creedy. Konerko could pick it with the best of them. I mean, you knew at the end of the games that defensively it was a lock.
Well, I'm looking forward to overreacting to spring training results and BA, this guy in 10 games hasn't got a hit yet, or this guy's got 6 homers. He must break the team with camp. But always fun. The insight from your point of view as a former player, always appreciative. And you got a shipment in fresh from Arizona with some of those cool Cactus League hacks. I think that you and I are going to come up with some type of giveaway on the podcast here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's crazy. I think what we should do is do another live one. I think those are the most fun for the fans. And then maybe whoever gets chosen is like the I don't know, the 10th, 13th.
Oh, you do like
number? What's he wearing? 5?
Oh, I like it. Like you're doing like a radio-thon, like whoever the 7th caller at 555-31. Yeah.
The Kasem top 40, like the 10th caller.
Oh, we're aging ourselves.
What's a telephone, dude?
Yeah, it's so good. All right, for BA, I'm Guff. We appreciate you guys watching this edition or listening to this edition, wherever you get audio form podcasts of the White Sox Recap Podcast. If you don't already subscribe to the recap, what are you doing? Join the 250,000 people who have already done that and click that notification bell. So every time we drop a new episode, boom, you get a notification to make sure you go back and listen to these two guys talk about your favorite baseball team. For Brian Anderson, I'm Ryan McGuffey. We'll see you next time on the White Sox Recap Podcast.